You are. All right. We're here with two of the candidates in the District 14 Republican primary race. We have Jim Oberweis and Sue Rezin. I'd like to ask each of you to please introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for Congress. Mr. Oberweis.
Sure. I think my background is unique in that I have started a business from scratch, Oberweis Asset Management, and the Oberweis family of funds built it into a business with in excess of $1 billion of investors' funds, which we've managed. And in addition to that, when my older brother had a stroke and was unable to continue at Oberweis Dairy, I bought that business and built it from one ice cream store and 50 employees to today 43 ice cream stores and over 1,200 employees. So I've had a lot of experience in the private sector, more than any of the other candidates. I also have had now 7 years of experience serving in the Illinois Senate, so I have that combination. In addition to that, I'm the only elected official who's lived in the 14th Congressional District for my entire life, same house for the last 42 years, and I think that's a very important factor. My friend and colleague, Senator Rezin, lives south of I-80 in downstate Illinois, and she's done a very good job as a state senator. And I'm sure we'll hear why she thinks she could do a good job in the congressional district as well. I also, you may remember, ran for the United States Senate against Dick Durbin 6 years ago, and I gave Dick Durbin the very closest race he's ever had in his entire Senate career, beat him in 88 out of 102 counties, and in the 14th Congressional District, I beat Dick Durbin in every single county in the district. If I can beat Dick Durbin, I feel fairly comfortable that I can beat Lauren Underwood. And it's critical that we replace Lauren Underwood because according to a UCLA study, she has a more extreme liberal voting record than either Nancy Pelosi or AOC. And I don't believe that that kind of a voting record fits with people in the 14th Congressional District.
Fantastic. Ms. Rezin, the same question to you. Please introduce yourself. Tell us why you're running.
And again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Sue Rezin, state senator. I got my start many years ago as a stay-at-home mom. I also worked and managed our family commercial real estate company. While I was a stay-at-home mom, I was very engaged in working on local boards. And when you do that, you learn what good policy looks like. Very shortly after, I decided to run for office. About 12 years ago, I was asked to run for state rep. I did. I ran against a 10-year incumbent that had been funded by Speaker Madigan. I worked very hard. It was a grassroots campaign, and we worked very hard for a year and a half, and we ended up winning that election in a year that was very difficult for Republicans to win by a large margin. Shortly thereafter, my senator retired. I was appointed to the Senate. I represent a swing Senate district, a district that because I represent a swing Senate district, I've always had top tier races in the Senate district where the Chicago machine, all of the money from Chicago, the boots on the ground, come in and fund my opponent. They bring people in from Chicago to knock on doors for my opponent. All of the machine comes in. In all of the races, all of the top tier races, we were able to win by very large margins. My 2016 race in the Senate was well over several $1 million race. We worked very hard. Again, I put together a team that's very grassroots in order to win. Because of my ability to win very top tier races, unlike my colleague, Jim Oberweis, who has run and lost 6 times for state races and has spent $15 million of his own money trying to win his races, and he has not won. He talks about the time that he did well against Senator Durbin. What he doesn't tell you is he still lost the race and he underperformed on the ticket by 50%, which affects every single elected official that's up for election that year.
Okay. Each of you, I'd like you to please keep your answers to 2 minutes or less. And I'd just like to begin by asking each of you to go down the line here from left to right, introduce yourself, and tell us why you're running for Congress.
Okay, sounds good. Just to clarify, 2 minutes, is that right? Or is it a quickie?
Go ahead, 2 minutes.
Okay, sounds great. And by the way, I'm sorry, I'm a little under the weather with my throat. I usually sound a little bit better than this. But just to give you an idea of who I am, my name is Jerry Evans, and I'm a young millennial, a small businessman, an entrepreneur, educator, and truly a political outsider. I have a beautiful wife, Lisa, of 5 years, and an amazing son, Michael, who's about 1.5 years old. And I own a music school that I founded from scratch that has about 275 to 300 students, as well as around 12 staff members. I want to let you know that I'm a Christian, and I'm absolutely unashamed of that, as well as I'm a very, very strong supporter of President Donald J. Trump. First off, I want to let you know that I do respect every candidate here in this race, whether they're here or not. And it really does take courage to be here. And we all know that career politicians, those career politicians that are out there, they often have an angle in politics. And I'm going to tell you right now that I'm Jerry Evans. I don't have an angle. I don't have some sort of secretive thing that I'm trying to do. Instead, I actually just want to live a life of service and self-sacrifice the same way that Jesus did. I really care about being honest and having integrity and being truthful and being transparent about my viewpoints. And I'm excited to share with you that I'm the candidate that from day one has been straightforward on my website and in my statements, as well as social media. My positions are available, and I've been sticking with those positions since then. Also, just in addition to that, several weeks ago, I did announce that my top 5 policy plan for Illinois, and that includes healthcare, immigration, tax cuts, defending life, and ending human trafficking once for all. And so in terms of, let's say, just a comment on taxes and immigration, my tax plan lowers the middle-class tax rate so that a middle-class tax family could get to potentially saving up to $6,000 a year. My immigration plan, includes the necessary funding to finish building the wall on the southern border, while also creating a path for a modern immigration process. And so I want to let you know, I'm so thankful that you'd allowed me to be here. Again, my name is Jerry Evans, and I care very much about being honest and transparent, and I look forward to doing that with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Catalina?
Hi, everybody. My name is Catalina Lauf. I was born and raised in this district right here, actually down the street in Woodstock. My mother came here legally from Guatemala. My dad is a small business owner. And being born and raised in this district, I was taught the values of hard work, personal responsibility. And I see the American dream that I'm the product of under attack today. We have a very far left young socialist wing here, one here in this district, Lauren Underwood, and not only is it time for new faces and new perspective on the side of freedom in the Republican Party to stand forward, but we need people who are very supportive of President Trump and his America First agenda. I'm honored to be the only candidate here that worked for President Trump. I was a political appointee for his Department of Commerce. And having that business and political experience, we need to ensure that we're preserving free market, free enterprise values here in this district. It is a district that is largely comprised of small businesses, agricultural industry, but also the suburbs. And the only way to accurately represent this district is by having somebody who's willing to fight for the values that this district represents, but is also not afraid to fight on a national scale. I'm the only candidate here in this primary who's received national media attention because I'm not afraid to fight against the growing socialism that is haunting our country. So I hope to have the support of the constituents here in my home district, and please vote for me.
Thank you. Mr. Marter?
All right. Good afternoon. I'm James Marter. I'm running for Congress in the 14th Congressional District that District President Trump won. I love and treasure our freedoms, our Constitution, our liberty, our Republican form of government, and those are things I believe are worth fighting for. And I'm going to fight for those. I will join the House Freedom Caucus. I will back and have been backing President Trump and the America First agenda since he became our Republican nominee in the summer of 2016 as the Kendall County Republican Party chairman, and also personally. I had the great honor to go to his inauguration and the Freedom Ball back in 2017. And before I got into this race, I pulled out my checkbook and wrote a check to President Trump's campaign for 2020 reelection. And did it again in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and had the honor and privilege to see him in Trump Towers in Chicago. We have socialist Democrat Lauren Underwood, who wants to turn the American dream into the socialist nightmare, along with dear leader Nancy Pelosi. And so, to me, these things are sacred to us. We have freedoms, we have our Constitution, we need to back it all the way. Look, I'm a leader you can trust with business experience in manufacturing and international business. I work with workers on the factory line, in the laboratories, in the warehouses, in the conference room, and I meet with executives in the boardroom. So we need someone who actually has industry experience and can work hard, not only with our political folks, but our people in the business world to make sure that the government's not in our pockets and in our way. Finally, life, religious liberty, faith in God, my family, those are the most important things to me. My beautiful wife, Jill, of 34 years, we have 4 children and our first granddaughter. I'm in this race to fight for them and fight for all the people of the 14th District.
Fantastic. Ms. Catella.
Yes, fellow candidates, fellow citizens. My name is Anthony Catella. I'm from St. Charles, Illinois. I'm an Army veteran and a former Catholic priest, and currently a captain in the Indiana Guard Reserve. So I feel strongly about service to God and country. And I believe in I believe in many things, but I just have 2 minutes, so I got to make it quick. I believe that there's good politicians and bad politicians. A good politician is someone who takes office and puts the people before himself or herself. And if there's something good that can help him or her, that's a byproduct. But the real product is the help that he or she gives to his or her constituents when elected. And a bad politician is just the opposite of that. Well, I'm not a bad politician. In fact, I want to be a good politician that rises to the level of statesmanship. And as mentioned in my first few sentences, I'm a volunteer, and I volunteer out of service and love. I think it is important to accept the opposite viewpoint, but not necessarily to have to agree with it. But also to take it's just as important to take a brave stand on what I believe. And I believe in the humble use of power, term limits, bipartisan cooperation, and order with justice under law. And I have supported and responded in support of many organizations that have talked to me and reached out to me, such as the Bring Our Troops Home movement. They are for, and I am for, the constitutional obligation of the Congress, and only the Congress, to declare war and commit our troops to foreign soil. And I'm strongly pro-life. I have heard from many, many people in the pro-life cause, and I can assure them that I'm their candidate. I believe it is important to find common ground upon which all of us, of all faiths and persuasions, can stand, and thence to move upward, onward, and forward together to make our country the kind of country our founders dreamt when they founded it in 1776 and 1787.
Thank you. President Trump took office with a goal to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. That didn't exactly happen, but the health care law has been stripped of several provisions, and the administration has refused to defend it in court. Would you vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and what, if anything, would you replace it with? Senator Rezin, we start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, the reason we're still having a discussion about health care is because health care is not affordable and it's not accessible. And both parties, the Democrat and the Republican Party, have failed, I would say, in the last decade to really put a system in place that helps the middle class. These are people that are hardworking people that make just enough money not to qualify for Medicaid, however, may have insurance from the exchange and have a $5,000 deductible. They can't afford a $5,000 deductible to access the healthcare system. So first of all, as we figure out what is the answer to healthcare, we need to make sure we protect people with pre-existing conditions so that they feel that they will always be covered. I am the only person in this entire race that has actually passed a bill that protects people with pre-existing conditions as we have this discussion about health care. What should we do about health care? Several things. Allow people to purchase insurance across party lines. Make sure that we encourage and promote HSAs, health savings accounts, which makes it a little bit easier for people to save to deal with the deductible that they have to deal with. We can also, we need to look at and make sure that we bring down the cost of prescription medicine, which is the #1 issue for senior citizens. Senior citizens, when they go to pick up their medicine, sometimes it's $500 and $600 a month. they don't know that they need to ask the pharmacist, do you have a coupon or something that will make my medicine cheaper? Because the pharmacist has a gag order. He cannot tell the person that they can actually use the coupon he has to get cheaper medicine. So we need to change that and take that out and make sure that all of the coupons that are available for people that are trying to get medicine is available to them immediately.
Senator Oberweis, same question to you. Would you vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and what, if anything, would you replace it with?
Sure. Let me start, by the way, with correcting some misstatements that Senator Rezin made. I certainly have never spent $15 million of my own money for congressional or for any races, because I've never had that much money to start with. In fact, for the last two state Senate races, I spent none of my own money. It was all from contributors. So I don't know why she said that or where she got that information. It's just totally wrong. I also want to point out that, yes, I've lost some statewide races, but no conservative has won statewide in Illinois since Peter Fitzgerald. It's very, very difficult for a conservative Republican to win, but when I was asked to do it and people asked me to represent the party on a statewide basis, I agreed to serve in that capacity, knowing that it was a very difficult obstacle to overcome. So I just want to correct the record. When it comes to medical care, I think it's important that we increase transparency and we increase competition to help bring down medical costs. I filed legislation in Springfield for the state of Illinois, a bill called Right to Shop Act. Under that bill, it would allow individuals to shop for elective surgery like a hip or a knee replacement if they wish to do so. They wouldn't be required to, totally optional, but they would be allowed to do so. It would require insurance companies to publish their average in-network price on their website, and then members of that network could shop if they wish to, and if they found a price from a provider they wanted to use that was lower than the average in-network price, they could do so. The insurance company would pay, and the customer, the patient, would get to receive or keep half of the savings over the average in-network price. And the insurance company would get to keep the other half. It sounds like an absolute win-win, right? Both sides win. Insurance company saves money, the patient saves money. And yet the insurance companies fought that because they were afraid that they would lose control over their marketplace. To me, that is short-term thinking. We need more competition. I have proposed allowing the re-importation of American-made drugs from Canada for 12 years in some of the races that the Senator was referring to earlier. I'm delighted that the President has taken up that call because it will save Americans a lot of dollars.
It happened, but the health care law has been stripped of several provisions, and the administration has refused to defend it in court. Would you vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and what, if anything, would you replace it with?
Absolutely. I would firmly support repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. Look, it was a policy that was trying to solve human needs with government intervention, and we need to ensure that we are, especially when it comes to our healthcare for 300 million people, that it is being solved, reform is being solved in a way that is free market, free enterprise. And Obamacare, and look at what the far left, I mean, Lauren Underwood included, they're looking for more government control of our healthcare. That increases the cost and lowers the quality of care. So we need to ensure that we're solving it in a free market way. Pre-existing conditions was something that President Trump was a big champion for and has since made sure that we are respecting pre-existing conditions, but the entire thing needs to be changed. We need to look at it from the supply and the demand side and ensuring that we are taking the cost out of it. People should not be going bankrupt over high cost of healthcare, but we also need to focus on the quality and solve it again in a free market way.
Okay. Mr. Marter, the same question to you. Would you vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and what, if anything, would you replace it with?
The answer to that is yes, absolutely. So as a small business owner, I left a good corporate job that I had, SAP America, out of the Chicago office in 2002. And when I left that, I had to shop for insurance for my family of 6 at the time, my wife and I and our 4 kids, in the what I call the formerly free private health insurance market. At that time, we were paying about $6,000 a year for our family's health care, which was a great policy. I think they dubbed it the Cadillac, although it wasn't actually the best plan you could have bought, but it was a great plan. We had it, and we were able to shop around in the market when prices went up, go to competitors, get better prices. And fast forward 2010, all of a sudden every year our insurance skyrocketed 25%, 50%, 70%, you name it. After 10 years, 364%. We're now paying about 30 grand a year for my wife and myself. Our kids are grown up, they're off the policies, they have their own. I've seen the disaster of what it's been. Increased taxes on Americans, largest tax increase in American history, hidden because the taxes were on medical devices, they were on insurance companies and everything else. So what we need to do, and I'll try to get to the wrap it up here, first of all, competition vis-a-vis the Commerce Clause across state lines, portability insurance from employer to employee. These are big things. This is why the prices are high, number one. Tort reform, price transparency, HSAs for everybody, not just people who meet certain criteria in this and that type of policy. And the biggest thing of all will be competition for prescription drugs, not in all markets across international borders and everything else. And finally, we will protect pre-existing conditions because Obamacare had very little to do with that. That was the 1996 HIPAA law, and we need to shore that up a little bit, but for the most part, we already had that done.
Time's up. Thank you. And finally, Mr. Katella.
Yes, on the healthcare issue.
Just a moment. I'm sorry, Jerry.
Did you write?
There we go. Yeah.
Oh, yes, healthcare. Well, I'm for a comprehensive, high-quality healthcare to be within the reach of all Americans. I'm for a comprehensive healthcare plan for people who are not now able to afford it, with vastly improved protections against catastrophic illness, and to protect and include those with pre-existing conditions. We deserve a healthcare system in this country for all of our people. I am for a healthcare plan that maintains the standards of healthcare quality without raising taxes. The state of a family's health must never be determined by the size of a family's wealth. Other plans for healthcare, such as Affordable Care Act, have cost somewhere between $80 and $100 billion and have the tendency to put the heavy hand of the federal government upon our healthcare system. This is wrong. I think this is the wrong approach because that's the kind of type of big government healthcare plan that proves ineffective and affects the quality of health care. The plan we need is a health care plan based upon partnership, not paternalism. The guiding principle of a good health care plan is that while government has its proper part to play, let us always understand that we must ensure that the medical profession primarily serves its patients and not the federal government. Thank you.
And finally,
Maybe Jerry.
I wasn't going to forget Jerry. We're going to start the next one. Mr. Marter will do. Jerry, same question to you. Would you vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and what, if anything, would you replace it with?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Eric. I appreciate that very much. So I have a number of things to say on that. First off, I would definitely seek to repeal the Unaffordable Care Act, as I will call it. Repeal the Unaffordable Care Act and replace it with something much more effective. If we think about this for a second, what is a healthcare law is for what? It is for healthcare. Well, we have so many tremendous problems with the Unaffordable Care Act that actually works against good healthcare. So I want to let you know that on this healthcare issue, I've actually released one of my top 5 policy plans on this issue regarding healthcare, where I really care about, first off, protecting people with pre-existing conditions. I've been through parasite issues where I didn't have a normal diet for months. I've been through Lyme disease. I know what it's like to be down and out. And I'm fully committed to protecting people with pre-existing conditions. I also care about lowering prescription drug costs and leaning towards the Republican legislation HR 19, which sought to bring transparency towards pharmacy benefit managers, but also open the market by cutting red tape so that we have competition across state lines, as well as updating it and speeding up the FDA approval process so that it doesn't take so long for a drug to be approved. But what I would say is that in the end, we have to remember what the ultimate goal is. And the ultimate goal is making sure people have adequate access to health care. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked with patients or with doctors where they say because of red tape in the Unaffordable Care Act or other problems with the law, they are actually prohibited from doing things that are in the best interest towards their patients. I was talking to a friend in Oklahoma. He felt that he experienced those things. I have a wonderful supporter where the wife and the mother, she was a phenomenal heart doctor. You know what happened when Obamacare was passed? They couldn't handle it. They had to close. They had to sell their practice, you know what, to a massive corporation. So I'm committed to repealing Obamacare and replacing it with something much more effective that accomplishes health care, protects people with pre-existing conditions, as well as fiscally responsible and focused on open, free market solutions.
A lot of dollars.
The last time this seat was contested, the state and local tax cap that was included in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that the Trump administration got passed, that was a real hot button issue, largely because of the large, the rate of property tax in the state can be a killer for a lot of homeowners, as I'm sure you know. Do you agree with the way that the state and local tax cap is currently set up? And if not, how would you work to repeal or increase that cap? Senator Oberweis, can we start with you on this one?
Sure. The 2017 Tax and Jobs Act, I think, was absolutely necessary, but we didn't talk about the most important feature, and that is that it stopped corporate inversions. We were losing corporate headquarters to other countries because of our extraordinarily high tax rates compared to the rest of the developed world. There has not been one single inversion since that bill passed, and that is a great benefit to this country. All we've talked about is the negative, the downside, but you know what? When you change one part of the tax code, if you want a balanced budget, something else has to give. I will tell you that personally, this has been very expensive for me. To lose those deductions has cost me a lot more than a reduction in the rates would save me. So personally, it's a negative. But I think it was the right thing because it did have the major effect of reducing those loss of corporate headquarters. Now, would I like to see that limit increased for SALT deductions? Of course I would. I would benefit, as would many other people. But I'm a strong proponent, a strong believer in the fact that we must have balanced budgets so that if we're going to increase that allowed deduction, then we have to find other ways to offset that revenue. So I would be delighted to increase the SALT allowed deductions, but it all depends on what we can do to balance that off, and that's a critical point, and I'm willing to listen and work with the other side when I'm in Washington to try to find reasonable solutions. But my number one goal, I'm very concerned about the $23 trillion of debt that our country has, going up at a very rapid rate of something like another $1 trillion a year. That has to stop. That will be my number one focus, is to make sure that we have balanced budgets and we stop the runaway deficits that we've been experiencing.
Senator Rezin, same question to you. What do you think about the state and local tax cap? Do you agree with the way that it's set now, or if not, how would you work to raise it?
Sure, and thank you. I'd like to make one clarification. My colleague talks about bills that he would like to pass, but since he's been in the Senate, he's only passed one bill, and that was to increase the speed limit to 75 miles an hour. So again, it's good to have good ideas, but you need to be able to get legislation passed, and I have. Regarding property taxes, obviously this is the number one issue throughout the district. So if you look at the counties that the 14th Congressional District in, they have some of the highest property taxes, as does Will County and Kane and McHenry and DuPage and DeKalb. And it's important, first of all, to see what can we do to lessen the burden for the tax owners, because many of these people are paying higher property taxes than they are their mortgages. I have worked on for 2 years, and this year I believe I will get it passed, a bill that allows communities that have more than one school district, and as you know, 70% of your property tax bill goes to the school districts. I have a bill that allows people by referendum, constituents by referendum, to share administrative services within all of the school districts in the county, should they choose. Why is that? Because we spend $500 per student on average for school administration. Clearly, the state of Illinois is an outlier. This is one way to reduce the cost without really changing the school district or their levy or their ability to negotiate teacher negotiations. This bill allows, if you look at other states that have shared administrative services, they spend on average of maybe $100 to $200 on average per student for school administration. This is a bill I've worked on. This is my third year. I feel very confident that we'll be able to get that bill passed this year. And that's what results look like in order to address the property tax issue in the district.
And you touched upon it a little bit there, Jerry, but the last time that this seat was contested, the state and local tax cap that was included in the tax reform plan was a real hot button issue. Do you agree with the federal, state, and local tax cap that's in place now? If not, how would you work to repeal or raise it, or lower it, or raise it, I guess?
Right. That's referring to SALT.
Yes.
The state and local tax.
Yes.
Well, I understand that Congressman Caston and Underwood, that was their response to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of the President Trump's administration, because they were saying that it was unfair that this Tax Cut and Jobs Act only benefited the wealthiest 1% of the economy, and so they're very much for the capping the SALT. I don't think that I just think this brings us to the precipice of class warfare. You know, as a member of the American Legion, we recite every time we begin our meetings, we recite our preamble to the Constitution for the American Legion. And one of the tenets is to oppose the autocracy of both the classes and the masses. In the United States of America, we have no ruling class, and we have no masses. We have we the people. And we the people are given the equal opportunity, especially in the economy, to earn as much as we possibly can, to have an economic system where the good fortune of others will multiply their own. And I stand firmly for that. And I think that what the Democrats proposed with the SALT Act was yet again another attempt to create class divisions in this country that we neither need nor should have.
Jerry, same question to you. The state and local tax exemption, should it be raised? Should it be done away with? Or should the exemption be unlimited?
Yeah.
What do you think about the SALT?
Yeah, Eric, thanks so much for bringing that up. So, like I mentioned in the previous answer, I do believe right now the state and local deduction cap, which is at $10,000, I believe the cap is too low. I think it needs to be raised, and I would start the conversation, or I would start the debate at raising it to about $12,500. And then obviously converse about that in Congress. But basically right now, if you think about it, especially because of what, unfortunately, Mike Madigan and J.B. Pritzker have done with Illinois being one of the least friendly tax states in all of America, that SALT deduction is really tough on a number of families. And so I want to go ahead and make sure that we're caring about families. We're taking into account the needs that they have and the voice that they have, because I've heard from multiple people who would say, Jerry, that was tough for us, or that was difficult for us. And so we need to listen. We need to find out a way to help them, as our state level government has made a lot of mistakes with overtaxing our citizens. Again, I would go from $10,000 and just start the debate at $12,500 and go from there. But in the end, I think what this comes down to is also tax responsibility and fiscal responsibility. So, we don't need to be raising gas taxes. We need to be lowering gas taxes. We don't need to be not showing up at votes or voting present on issues like this, but we need to be taking a stand saying, you know what, the way to help fuel our economy, the way to help parents provide opportunities for their families, whether it be music lessons or whether it be sport opportunities or whatever, is to make sure that they have more money in their pockets, because that individual and that family knows what to do best for their family, not the government. And we need to go ahead and be helping them with that and making sure that the government is not uncorruptly, make sure the government is not corruptly taking so much money and then misusing it.
Catalina, same question to you about the state and local tax exemption.
Absolutely, and I wanted to point out that the legislation that Lauren Underwood and Sean Caston were trying to push actually didn't do anything for the middle class, or what they're trying to push actually only benefits 6% of the highest earners. So what Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and why they came back with the SALT cap, it forced people to recognize in states like Illinois and New Jersey and California that we are completely overtaxed. And so I think it's a good way to shed light on what's going on a state level, and it forces people to wake up. Why here in Illinois do we just allow this? Every year it's another increase on taxes, whether it's gas or bag tax now at the county level. Why are we allowing this to happen from a local perspective and in a state level perspective? It's time for us to wake up. It's time for not only fiscal conservatives but Democrats who are also fiscally conservative to start fighting back and pushing back, because if not, we're going to implode the way California is. We're going to implode the way New Jersey is, and I don't want to see that for this state. And I don't want to certainly see that for this district either. So it's time that we actually get Mike Madigan out and we recruit and have good people who are going to combat these and change these far Democrat districts into better Republicans who are fiscally conservative, so our state can turn around.
So you don't feel there's any change necessary to the state and local tax exemption cap?
Well, I do, but I would not. I don't like the way that Lauren Underwood and Sean Casten put it out there, because that is not that's not the answer, because it's not even benefiting anybody.
Mr. Marter, same question to you about the salt.
Yes. So Lauren Underwood, the Democrats, dear Leader Pelosi. Nice issue for them to run after Republicans on, right? So, but here's the facts. We also, while the cap went in, we also doubled the standard deduction. I used to do my own taxes way back in the day, and then until my wife became a income tax preparer professionally, and she did that for almost 10 years, and she still does our business taxes, personal taxes. She does them for family members for free, does all kinds of stuff in that. And the interesting thing is that most people aren't taking those deductions anyway. What people think of the middle class and the lower middle class, they don't qualify for enough deductions anyway, right? So nice issue. Let's package it as it's hurting the working class the most. Not true for the most part. Most people across America, even in Illinois, benefited from that package to the tune of $2,500, which is very similar to the number that Obama promised that we would save on health care with the passage of Obamacare, or the Unaffordable Care Act, right? So to me, it's about position. You already heard my answer on income taxes. If we have a flat income tax and it's 10%, trust me, folks are going to have a whole lot more money in their pocket than anything with a customized program with benefits for these people and those people and a bunch of bureaucrats managing the difference. So everyone used to complain about the notion of eliminating loopholes. That's what this was all about. It was about eliminating loopholes. Probably should go further all the way, go to the flat tax, get rid of all the loopholes. Everyone's treated fairly because everyone has the same tax rate. And no special treatment, no deductions for this, that, or the other thing. Let's get to a limited government, fair tax plan for everyone, not just the middle class, not to burden the rich, and certainly not to, we can start at a level that always treats us no taxation above the poverty level. So.
Okay, that's right. All right, we're back with you now, Jerry.
Great.
This is the last question before I'll ask each of you to give a closing statement.
Yeah.
So Congress has been criticized for failure to deliver any meaningful reforms to our immigration system.
Yeah.
What is your position on immigration, and what reforms do you support to the system, if any?
Yeah, absolutely. I support a large-scale reform to the immigration system. So first off, I want to let you know that we need to stand upon the rule of law. And I support the president, Donald J. Trump, in his efforts to secure the southern border. So we see, if you look at the data, you look at the fact that the wall, the 18 and 30-foot barriers, are actually extremely effective in stopping people from jumping the border illegally. So we need to secure the border and make sure that Immigration and Customs Enforcement has the resources that they need. And yes, we love Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We should not abolish them. We should just give them a big hug for the amazing work that they do every day. So we need to start with the rule of law, make sure we're securing the border. At the same time, we need meaningful immigration reform across the board. So again, I'm a small business owner. If I see a problem that has 7 or 8 components, you don't just solve 3 and then hope those other 4 or 5 go away. You've got to solve all of them. And so here's a few that I would go after. First off, we need to stop catch and release. It is incredibly uncompassionate that someone gets across the border illegally, then we catch them, we release them, they don't come back for their court date, they don't have a work permit or driver's license or any way to really function well in society. And that's uncompassionate, it's wrong, it shouldn't happen. And so we need to stop that practice of catch and release so that if for some reason they jump the border illegally and they are caught, then they either, while their case is being adjudicated, they're sent back home, or they're held so that they're not just released into the country. As well as I want to make sure that we have a streamlined path for those who are coming in the right way. So people coming from Asia or people coming from Europe or whatnot, if they're coming here legally, we want to make sure that other people aren't jumping ahead in front of them so that they're getting cut in line against. As well as for myself, we want to make sure that we compassionately take care of refugee seekers and asylum seekers and continue to allow them opportunities to apply to come here, as well as making sure that we lawfully but also compassionately take care of dreamers and allow them a path towards legalization. There's more I can say on that, but there's a policy plan on my website.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Catalina, you spoke a bit about this already, but what immigration reforms do you support to the system?
So the biggest problem is there's such a bottleneck effect happening right now at the border because of past administration policies where we incentivize people to come here illegally. We need to look at an America First policy when it comes to having safe and secure borders, but also looking at we have the best and the brightest minds that want to come here for opportunity. So as my colleague Jerry said here, why aren't we focusing on putting those people through the process? We need more judges at the border who want to have we need more judges for the people who want to come here legally and allow them, on that path, but then also focus on having the safe and secure borders. Right now, I was just visiting a local jail, and the majority of the ICE detainees aren't even from, Central American countries. And right now, the Democrats try to pit us as racists, as bigots, as people that don't want anybody coming here, but that's entirely false. It's so politicized that we need actual reforms, but we also need to combat the narrative that, we have so much trafficking happening at our border. We have drugs coming in. We have people that want to do us harm. And why is it our fault as a country to not only want to know who's coming in here, but also put them through the process that is going to ensure that the safety of our Americans is put first? But then also on an economy perspective, we have a big labor shortage in a lot of different industries, and the people that want to come here and want to work and be productive citizens, well, why aren't we prioritizing them? But then yet we're allowing all this the illegal immigration to happen. It seems pretty backwards to me.
Mr. Marter, what reforms to the immigration system, if any, do you support?
So I support the Numbers USA plan. I'm the only candidate in this race that's been rated by them as a true reformer. One of their key principles, though, is every human being needs to be treated with dignity and respect. So with that in mind, actually enforcing our borders, enforcing our immigration laws does that, and doesn't mean that we shouldn't be treating them with dignity and respect, but we also need to respect our borders and the people that are coming here illegally. So I oppose amnesty. I support interior enforcement, mandatory e-verify for all employers. That's huge, right? Assist local police with ICE detainers, defund sanctuary cities, fund the entry-exit system, end birthright citizenship, end the visa lottery, limit unnecessary worker visas. So this gets into the legal immigration part too, and reduce total immigration levels, because we've been wide open for decades, and we need to kind of pause a little bit and slow it down a little bit, because we're here to back American workers. I'm the only one here who's crossed the border to work in multiple countries with work permits and visa. I've crossed the border at McAllen, Texas into Reynosa, crossed the border at Eagle Pass, Texas into Piedras Negras, crossed the border in California into Tijuana, and I've flown into Mexico City to work in the mountain town of Cancun and stayed in the city of Pachuca. I've worked in Toronto, I've worked in Sao Paulo. Every time on those projects I just mentioned, those are 5 separate projects, I went with a work permit and a visa, and when I finished my job that I was invited there to do, working with my friends from countries all around the world, I came back and I went to get my next job back here at home, we need other people to respect our borders and our laws just like we do when we go out there for other countries. So,
Fantastic. And finally, Mr. Catella.
Thank you.
A question to you: what reforms do you support to the country's immigration system?
Certainly, America, land of immigrants. The concept here that we've been applying, I think, is that we should stop politicizing this issue and any issue and use the political process to help solve the issue. My suggestions would be secure the border, of course, with the wall, ICE, police, E-Verify, and then allow for an orderly immigration process. My great-great-uncle came here in 1900 and ran for Congress. And then third, those here illegally have to make a decision. They either get on the path to citizenship or simply return to their own countries. And there's nothing wrong with those other countries. You know, in the time of Franklin Roosevelt, we didn't have problems with Latin America, with these countries, because we were a good neighbor to them. At the time of John F. Kennedy, we had the Alliance for Progress. I think we should reconsider these great efforts that were put forward by these great giants, and I think that can go a long way in solving our relationships with the people south of our border. But as far as our commitment to maintain citizenship in this country, it's open to all that want to become citizens. You know, anybody can come from anywhere in the world. You know, you can go to France and not be a Frenchman. You can go to England and not be an Englishman, or China, not be a Chinese, or Japan, not be a Japanese. But anyone from anywhere in those countries in the world can come to the United States of America and become an American. And God bless them for it. Just do it legally and we can help them.
Congress has been criticized for failing to deliver any meaningful reforms to our immigration system. Now, what's your position on immigration? What reforms do you support, if any, Senator Rezin?
Well, first of all, this is a huge issue for the district. We have the right to protect and defend our borders. So that's where we would start, protect and defend our borders. And, you know, we would start with investing and paying for a wall, along with technology that allows us to protect our borders. Because when we have porous borders, and when we have sanctuary cities, it just allows, and you know, it's an invitation for the drug cartels, for human trafficking to come across borders. So that's where we would start. From there, surely we need to put legal immigration, a way to citizenship, pass it and enforce it, something that we've talked about for many years. Unfortunately, it's become a political hotbed for both parties. Way back when, several years ago, President Obama actually supported funding for a wall. Dick Durbin, U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, did not support the funding at the time in the appropriations for the wall because he said it did not provide enough money to fund a wall. So clearly this has become a political football, but for our country's safety, we need to protect and defend our border, put a wall into place, use technology that allows us to do that, and then create a legal citizen pathway to citizenship in our country.
Senator Oberweis, what is your position on immigration? What reforms do you support, if any, to the system?
Thanks. And before I answer that, I'd again like to correct a couple of misstatements by my colleague. First of all, she said the only bill that we passed was to increase the speed limit to 75. That hasn't passed yet, but we did increase it to 70 about 5 or 6 years ago, after a bill to do that had failed by 4 other attempts. So we managed to work across the aisle, get both sides to agree on that, and got that passed. I have had several other less significant bills that have passed the legislature. And the bill that I was talking about, the Right to Shop Act, actually had, I believe, 16 Republican co-sponsors and 17 Democrat co-sponsors. That's really working across the aisle. So that's 33 votes right there, and it takes only 30 votes to pass legislation. So clearly this would be something that would logically pass, except that the way things work in Springfield is the Senate president can refuse to allow a bill to be heard, to go to committee, which is what happened in this particular case. But we haven't given up. We're going to try to work on that again this next couple of months in Springfield. So to go back to immigration, which is a question you answered, very, very important. And I hope you remember I was a leading proponent of controlling illegal immigration in this country 12 and 15 years ago in some of the earlier statewide races that we were talking about a few minutes ago. That certainly hasn't gone away. It's only gotten worse. I think the concerns that I raised at that time, the huge cost to American taxpayers, are now becoming much more evident to people, and I'm delighted that the president has taken up this call to secure our borders. Just building a wall, unfortunately, is not enough. It's going to take more. I think we need to enforce our laws against companies who hire people here illegally, and E-Verify is an excellent way for companies to be able to eliminate any potential liability. In fact, Oberweis Dairy has used E-Verify for 15 years, and we certainly have been careful not to hire any illegal aliens. So I think that's an important step, and it's unfortunately been a little bit of a collusion, if you want to call it that, between the two parties, with Democrats believing that more illegal immigrants would be good because they think they'd be more voters for their side, and Republicans in some cases think it's a good thing to have illegal people coming in here because they think it might mean they can hire some people at a cheap or low wage. That's bad. We need to stop that.
Okay. This one's kind of a pick your own issue sort of question. Could you tell us about an important federal issue for voters in the 14th District and tell us how you would work to address it in Congress? Senator Oberweis, could you go first?
Sure. I think there are several. I have pledged, by the way, that when I'm elected, the first bill that I would like to file would be a term limits bill. I believe that term-limited legislators tend to vote in ways that they believe are good for the country, good for their state, whereas career politicians are more likely to vote in ways that they think are good for their own reelection. But I will admit, that's a long shot. That's very difficult to do, but it's something I certainly will pay attention to. The three issues that I've really talked about as being of critical importance to me that I do want to work on and hope to have some opportunity. I intend to work with the Freedom Caucus to focus on economic issues, to bring a return to sensible budgets, to balanced budgets, to avoid continuing resolutions like we just had this last time around with 2,300 pages of all kinds of pork thrown in at the last moment. That has to stop. Secondly, solving our medical care problem is another issue that I think is key. And again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, transparency and more competition are key, allowing the reimportation of American-made drugs from Canada so that drug companies are not selling drugs to the Canadian government at one low price and then selling them in the United States at a higher price is very important. Allowing competition for medical plans to be sold across state lines. Just common sense provides more competition, and there's no reason why that can't happen. And again, the president has taken up this as well, so I think that's a strong positive. And the third issue that we've, again, just talked about a little bit is illegal immigration. That's one of the key issues. I've got a strong background for 15 years in that issue. And I believe I have some ideas that could bring both sides together in a compromise, certainly allowing dreamers to establish a path to citizenship, but not their parents who broke the law. But to keep families together, there is a non-immigrant visa that could be used to allow that, and that could certainly be discussed. But in return for that, we need to end birthright citizenship for those who are in this country illegally. If a baby is born in this country of someone here legally, automatically should be a citizen. But if it's born to someone who is here illegally, should not provide automatic citizenship.
Senator Rezin, same question for you. Tell us about an important federal issue for voters in the 14th District and how you'd work to address it.
Well, certainly the number one issue is immigration. And as I said before, we have the right to protect and defend our border. We need to once and for all put a policy into place that allows for legal citizenship, pathway for people who are here who want to become citizens, and we need to enforce it. There's technology out there, as I talked about before, that will allow us to defend and secure our border. Secondly, healthcare. Healthcare, again, is not affordable and it's not accessible. This is a conversation that we need to have about the middle class. If we ever want to allow the middle class to grow, we have to be able to provide affordable, accessible health care for the middle class. These are people, if you look at when you're in a restaurant, people that's working hard. You know, if you're there for breakfast, they're there at 3 a.m, the waitresses, the waiters, working hard to make some money, but yet they don't have $5,000 that will allow them to access the medical system if they have a deductible, if they're lucky enough to have a plan at all. These are the people that I talk to all of the time when they may say, well, you know, I have insurance, but I can't afford to use it, because the first question I'm asked when I call to make a doctor support appointment is, who's your insurance provider and what's your deductible? And if your deductible's high, then you need to bring in the money in cash. So it's difficult to access the healthcare system. Also, the economy's humming now, it's doing well, although Illinois continues to underperform the federal or the national economy. But what happens when the economy is doing well, people are investing in the area, they're creating jobs, people are paying taxes, is now you have more money coming in to the budget in order to balance it. A good example is a year ago that the state of Illinois had a $1.4 billion surprise that came into the state. That's because our economy is doing a little bit better. More money came into the state because people are working, they're paying taxes, and that takes the burden off of raising taxes to pay for government. So we'll continue to do what we can to increase, provide for the economy and increase jobs and investments.
Well, have been issues that you would have liked to discuss here, and our time is limited, so this is the last question that I'll ask you, but really it's just, in a primary, a major concern for voters is electability, right? We want to nominate a candidate who is best positioned, in this case, to defeat the Democrat in November. So I'd like each of you, starting with you, Catalina, to just tell us why you're the person that voters should choose to take on Lauren Underwood in November, and if there are any other issues that you wanted to talk about now, go ahead.
Absolutely. The reason why we lost this seat is because a systematic problem that's happening in, the Republican Party. Our demographics change here, and unless we start, having people on our side that can grow the base, Lauren Underwood beat Randy Hultgren because the base was not energized, but she was also able to bring in a new electorate that traditionally was just different from what this district has been really used to. And as the demographics change, we need new faces in the side of conservative values and to fight for Republican values. Being born and raised here, I know what the constituents, really stand for, and I want to be a leader and represent them in the right way, where Lauren Underwood is not doing that. She fundamentally does not represent this district with her values, and we need the best person up against her. I'm the best person not only because of my credentials of working in the private sector, having worked for President Trump, but it's not even about beating Lauren Underwood, because that'll be easy in the general when I am up against her. We need a fighter now on a national scale with the growing socialism movement that is happening, particularly driven by the young progressive wing who are already in office. Well, who on our side is really fighting on the side of freedom? And I'm the only candidate here that's received national attention. I'm the only candidate. I outraised all 7 of my opponents on small dollar in-district contributions. That means that more people are on my message. They want a fighter now in Congress. And it's time that we have that. We need new faces and new perspective.
Fantastic. Mr. Marter, why are you the right candidate to face Lauren Underwood in November?
So, look, I love America. I treasure our freedoms and our Constitution. I will join the House Freedom Caucus and join my friend Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, Mark Meadows, and Warren Davidson, and all the great Freedom Caucus members that are out there fighting for Americans. They're the ones doing it. I support President Trump and the America First agenda. I will stand and fight for our Second Amendment rights 100%. No red flag laws, no bump stock bans, no backing down like our 2 state senators did down in Springfield. I'll respect our flag and our Constitution, and I'll fight for our conservative, pro-life, and pro-family values. I'm 100% pro-life, pro-family. I have the endorsement of Illinois Family Action. I have the personal endorsements of a dozen pastors. I've got the personal endorsement of David Avioni of the ICE PAC, which is Illinois Citizens for Ethics, a very big pro-life group. I have the endorsement of Michelle Bachmann, former presidential candidate and wonderful conservative congresswoman from Washington. These are the things that are going to matter to our conservative people in our district. Look, I've worked in international business and manufacturing all of my adult life, 34-year career. I don't need a 34-year career in Washington. What we need someone who's going to go there and make sure term limits actually gets passed, who supports a balanced budget amendment, and who will make sure that nobody is going to fund Planned Parenthood or any organization to support abortion ever again in Washington. We're going to get to a point where we're going to eliminate that. We're going to do it with President Trump because that's on his checklist. It's one of the few things he hasn't gotten done because he hasn't had a Congress to do with him. So I trust in God, my faith, and again, looking to protect my family and everyone else's family in this district from the socialist takeover in Washington.
Thank you. Mr. Katella, same question to you. Why are you the right candidate to face Lauren Underwood in November?
Well, I believe I'm the right candidate because I'm a truthful and honest person. Miss Underwood posed as a nurse. She said she was a nurse. But is there any proof of that? I don't know. That's up to her. But I can tell you this. I have worn the uniform of the United States soldier. I believe in freedom. I took an oath to fight for freedom. Although I've never been in combat, and that's true. I've never been in combat. But I've been ready. And I have also been a Catholic priest. And there's proof of that too. And I don't walk away from that. Well, I believe God called me to serve in public service. He called me to be in the military. He called me to be in the priesthood, and I've served. And I believe he's calling me to serve in politics and statecraft. And I'm prepared to answer that call. And this is who I've been. And I cannot deny it, nor would I want to deny it. The person running for public office has to be true to himself or herself and the people that they ask to vote for them. And that's me. That's the story of my campaign. And I'm proud to be a candidate for this office. And if I can take that oath, it'll be as almost identical to the one I took when I raised my right hand to heaven and swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies. I did it in the United States Army. I can do it in the United States Congress under this same stars and stripes of ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finally, Jerry, you're last to go here, but just give us a closing statement. Why are you the right person to face Lauren Underwood in November?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking that question. I think this is one of the integral things that we have to go ahead and answer here, not only in this session, but also during this campaign. So I want to let you know that first off, I'm a young millennial outsider who has a strong record of accomplishment in the private sector. I built a business from scratch with actually really almost no money because of getting through parasites and Lyme disease. Now my music school is, I believe, the biggest in the city that it's in. I've got an amazing marriage, I've got an amazing wife, and I'm accomplished in that area. Secondly, my values really truly do fit the district. So when you look at my support for our president, Donald J. Trump, and my support for lower taxation, I am strongly pro-life. I believe an unborn child is a person and has a right to life, and it doesn't have a voice right now, and I will be its voice. And I will go ahead and serve the unborn. On top of that, I want to stop human trafficking. I want to go ahead and protect religious liberties for those Christians or Jews or Muslims or people who would ascribe to any other faith, as well as I want to solve immigration and solve healthcare issues, as well as protecting the Second Amendment. My values fit the values of the district. On top of that, practically speaking, we as Republicans know that very often the Democrats like to play the race card, and that's very sad. And, well, my wife is half Asian. My brother is actually black. So good luck to the Democrats on that one. They won't be able to play that against me. Lastly, I know from some inside sources that Congresswoman Underwood's strategy is to play herself off as being very nice and play off the Republican as being a big, bad, mean person. Well, if you think about it, I've got a loving family. I hang out with kids all day and help them enjoy music. Good luck with playing me off as being the mean guy. I don't think it's going to happen. And then lastly, I think the crux of the issue comes down to People in the Republican primary as well as swing voters are just looking for someone who is relatable and honest and transparent. I want to let you know that I'm honest and transparent. I'm honest about my views from day one. I'm honest about my opponents. I'm transparent for myself, and I really care a lot about being relatable, and I believe I'm the best candidate to take on Lauren Underwood and defeat her.
Thank you all so much for your excellent. That's it for the prepared questions I had. Just hoping that each of you would be able to give us a closing statement. Tell us about, why you're the best person to take on Lauren Underwood in November if you win the nomination. I'd like to start with you, Senator Oberweis.
Sure. Again, I am the only elected official who lives in the district who is a candidate, and I've lived here for my whole life, 42 years in the same home in the Aurora, Sugar Grove area. I have run in this district and beaten Dick Durbin in every county in the district. I think that's a good background. We've also done polling that shows that if we can communicate Lauren Underwood's voting record, which according to UCLA is a more extreme record than Nancy Pelosi or AOC, I won't just beat her, I'll beat her by double digits. And I think that is the goal of all of us on the Republican side, is to replace Lauren Underwood, who does not fit with the people in this district. I think that I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, Senator Rezin, but living south of I-80 probably doesn't give her the same perspective that living in this district for my entire life has provided. Again, the fact that I have been a successful businessman, starting businesses from scratch and building it to $1 billion under management, building Oberweis Dairy from 50 employees to over 1,200 employees, shows that I have the background and the experience to understand what it will take to encourage entrepreneurs to create jobs and to create opportunities, to risk their time and their energy and their capital to provide opportunities for other people in the district. And that's an ability that I will take to Washington, the ability to work across the aisle and to listen to the other side, which comes from a lot of experience, not only in business, but in the legislature as well. So I look forward to that opportunity, and I appreciate the voters in the 14th Congressional District sending me to Washington. I will work tirelessly to make sure that happens. This is not a new career for me. This is something I hope to serve for 6 or 8 years and do the very best job I can. As I said, I believe in term limits. I think that's enough. Then we want to turn it over to someone else to take over from there.
Senator Rezin, same question to you. Can you give us maybe a closing statement and tell us why you're the best person to take on Lauren Underwood in November?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm proud to say that I have represented a part of this district for 10 years since I've been in the Senate. So yes, I live 4 miles outside of the district. Redistricting is happening where they redraw the lines in 2 years. More than likely, I will be in the district then. If not, I will look at moving in the district then. What my colleague fails to say is that even though he may have a house here, his wife has lived in Florida and is a citizen, a resident in Florida for many, many years, where they move their assets to Florida, their home extension in Florida as well. And because of that, they get a tax break. They don't pay state taxes in Florida. So yes, I live 4 miles outside of the district, but I am proud to say I have represented Kendall County for 10 years in the district. And since I've been there, the elected officials come to me when they need help. If they have issues with their schools, with their roads, with their government, I get the phone calls to help them. And that's because I'm happy to help them. And I have received their endorsement as well. I have run and won 5 elections, 3 top-tier elections in the state where the Chicago machine has come with boots on the ground and literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. They spent over $1 million against me in 2016. And I've assembled a team each time, and I've assembled a team this time for my congressional race that have always been successful. We're grassroots. We understand the district. I understand, yes, I'm also a business person, but I'm a mother. I'm a person that serves on many non-for-profits in the community. I understand what is important in the community, and I have a very good record in Springfield in supporting legislations that will help the state of Illinois to govern, and also legislation that will help the citizens in my district.
Eric, I have to have a short answer to that unfair hit that just occurred there, if I may.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
While it is true that my wife spends the winters in Florida, we have never moved assets to Florida. It was just claimed. In fact, because she has a residence in Florida and claims a Florida residency home exemption, that means I cannot claim a home residency exemption in Illinois, which means I pay more taxes in Illinois than I would if she were also a resident of Illinois and we had only an Illinois exemption. 100% of my income is taxed by Illinois income taxes. So this idea that we're moving assets or something like that is absolute sheer unfair nonsense and not true.
Okay.